Right now, you are standing on top of a lie. For almost 50 years, textbooks swore they knew who the first Americans were, until a quiet Texas creek proved every one of them wrong. Buried in the dirt were 2.6 million clues. Stone tools older than the pyramids, older than writing, older than the wheel. But that's just the beginning. Beneath Texas, under highways, cattle fields, and sleepy little towns, there are sealed caves no human saw for 24,000 years. There are saber-toothed cats floating in flooded tunnels. There's a giant stone wall hiding under an entire town that nobody can fully explain. Some of this was found by accident. Some of it shouldn't exist at all. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at the ground under your feet the same way again. So, ready to see what Texas has been hiding? Number 1. The Gault Site. Let's start with the discovery that broke history in half. About an hour north of Austin, along a quiet, muddy stream called Buttermilk Creek, there's a farm that looks like 1,000 other Texas farms. Grass, cattle, fences, nothing special. But start digging down through that soil, and something incredible happens. You begin traveling backward through time. Each layer of earth is like a page in a book. And when archaeologists from the University of Texas turned those pages, they went deeper and deeper, until they hit ground that was more than 16,000 years old. That number matters, and here's why. For nearly 50 years, science taught something called the Clovis First theory. The idea was simple. The first humans reached the Americas around 13,500 years ago, and everyone alive today descended from them. It was in every textbook. It was treated as fact. Then Galt opened its mouth and spoke. Beneath the Clovis layers, in soil that had never been disturbed, researchers found stone tools that were thousands of years older. People were here long, long before anyone believed possible. These findings weren't just a rumor. They were published in the respected journal Science Advances in 2018, forcing experts around the world to rethink everything. Now let's talk about the sheer scale, because it's almost hard to believe. Archaeologists estimate that around 2.6 million artifacts have been pulled from this single site, and that's from excavating only a tiny fraction of it. Stone blades, spear points, scrapers, cutting tools, an entire ancient workshop frozen in the dirt. But here's the detail that gives me chills. Among all those tools, they found a small stone pavement, a deliberately laid floor. It may be the remains of one of the oldest human dwellings ever discovered on the entire continent. Imagine that. A home, a place where an ancient family slept, ate, and stayed warm. More than 16,000 years ago, sitting quietly under a Texas cow pasture the whole time. Think about what that means. While the rest of the world pictures ancient history happening in Egypt or Mesopotamia, some of the oldest human footprints in North America were pressed into the mud right here. No pyramids, no temples marking the spot. Just a creek, a farm, and a buried secret that rewrote the story of who we are. So the next time somebody says Texas has no ancient ruins, remember Galt, the buried city of stone older than civilization itself. And believe me, we're just getting started. Number 2, Caddo Mounds. Now let's leave the creek behind and head east, deep into the piney woods near a small town called Alto. Out here, the air smells like pine needles and the land rolls gently. And rising out of that lush green landscape are 3 grassy hills. At first glance, you'd swear they were natural. Just soft bumps in the earth covered in grass. They are not. These are the Caddo Mounds, and they were built entirely by human hands more than 1,200 years ago. Sit with that for a moment. Now, I want you to really picture how this was done, because it's staggering. There were no machines, no trucks, no wheelbarrows, not even the wheel as we know it. These enormous mounds were raised one woven basket of dirt at a time. A person would fill a basket with earth, carry it, and empty it. Then again, and again. Millions of times. This wasn't the work of a few people over a weekend. It was the effort of an entire community, working together across many years, driven by shared belief. And these weren't random piles. Each mound had a sacred purpose. 2 of them were temple mounds, with important buildings constructed right on top, lifted high above the village so everyone could see them. The third was a burial mound, a resting place reserved for their most honored leaders. This was hallowed ground, the spiritual and political heart of an entire people. Here's what makes this site even more important. The Caddo Mounds were the southwesternmost ceremonial center of the great mound builder culture, a vast, sophisticated civilization that stretched across much of ancient North America. So these Texas mounds weren't isolated. They were the far edge of a massive, connected world of trade, religion, and power that most people today have never even heard of. And the ancestral Caddo were skilled in ways that shatter old stereotypes. They were expert farmers, working the rich soil. They were talented potters, creating beautiful, delicate ceramics. They lived in tall, dome-shaped grass houses that could stand for years. This was a thriving, organized, deeply cultured society, not a scattered group of wanderers. But maybe the most powerful part is this. To the Caddo people living today, these mounds are not just old dirt. They are not just a museum exhibit or a tourist stop. They remain sacred, a living connection to their ancestors that has survived for over 1,000 years. So as you stand beside them, remember you're not just looking at ancient architecture. You're standing beside a temple, a tomb, and a holy place, all built by hand, all still watching over the land where it began. Number 3, the Rockwall Formation. All right, this next one is where things get genuinely strange. The kind of mystery that has sparked arguments for over 150 years and still isn't fully settled today. Northeast of Dallas, there's a town, and that town has a very unusual name, Rockwall. Now, most towns are named after a founder, a river, or a hopeful idea. But this town? It's named after something buried directly beneath it, something the early settlers dug up in the 1800s that looked so impossible, so man-made, that they couldn't believe nature had done it. What they found was a vast underground formation of stacked rock slabs. And I don't mean a random jumble of stones. These slabs appeared to be arranged in neat, level rows, course upon course, exactly like the courses of bricks in a wall built by human hands. In some places, it looked like there were even corners and windows. The formation stretches for miles underground, encircling the area like the buried foundation of some lost, giant structure. Put yourself in the settler's boots for a second. You're digging a well and suddenly your shovel hits what looks like an ancient masonry wall, deep in the earth, in the middle of nowhere. Wouldn't your mind race? Who built it? When? And why is it buried? For over a century, that exact question has divided people. On one side, you have the dreamers and mystery hunters who insist this must be an ancient structure, proof of some forgotten advanced people. On the other side, you have the geologists. And here's where I have to be honest with you because credibility matters. The scientific consensus leans firmly toward a natural explanation. Most geologists believe the Rockwall Formation is what's called a sandstone dike, a feature created deep underground when minerals slowly filled long cracks in the rock over millions of years. As those mineral-filled cracks hardened and the softer earth eroded away, they left behind straight, wall-like slabs that just happened to resemble human masonry. But, and this is the fascinating part, it's so eerily convincing that even today it draws scientists, researchers, and curious visitors trying to understand it. It's genuinely one of the most wall-like natural formations on Earth. And I think there's a beautiful lesson buried in there. Sometimes the most structure-like thing hidden beneath Texas wasn't built by any human at all. It was patiently engineered by the planet itself over spans of time our minds can barely grasp. So is it a wall? Almost certainly not. But is it a genuine, unsolved feeling wonder that made an entire town question reality? Absolutely. And that's exactly why it's earned its place on this list. Number 4, inner Space Caverns. Let's go back near the Gault Site, close to the town of Georgetown, for a discovery that is basically a time capsule, one that stayed locked for tens of thousands of years. Beneath the ground here lies inner Space Caverns. But for almost all of human history, nobody knew it existed. And that's the key to why it's so precious. This cave was completely sealed off from the surface. No entrance, no cracks big enough to crawl through. It was a hidden chamber, closed to the outside world, silent and untouched in total darkness. So how was it found? Not by an explorer, not by a treasure hunter. It was found completely by accident. In 1963, a highway construction crew was drilling test holes into the ground, checking whether it was solid enough to build on. Their drill bit went down and suddenly punched through into empty space. They'd broken into a hidden world that hadn't seen a single ray of light in an unimaginably long time. And what was waiting inside? A frozen snapshot of the Ice Age. Down in pits within the cave, scientists began recovering ancient animal bones, and when they dated them, the numbers were breathtaking. Some remains were around 13,000 years old. Others reached back 15,000 years. And the oldest? A staggering 24,000 years old. We're not talking about ordinary animals here. These were creatures from a lost world, giants that roamed Texas during the Ice Age and no longer exist anywhere on Earth. Their bones had lain in that sealed darkness, perfectly protected, for 240 centuries. And here's why the seal matters so much, scientifically speaking. In most caves, water, animals, and time contaminate everything. Things wash in, things get moved, the record gets scrambled. But because inner Space Caverns was sealed shut, nothing disturbed it. It's as if nature carefully closed the lid, taped it shut, and kept the contents in pristine condition until humans were finally ready to study them. Think about the emotion of that moment in 1963. 1 second, those workers are doing a routine, boring job on a highway project. The next, their drill breaks into a chamber holding the secrets of the Ice Age, a place where the remains of vanished giants had waited in silence since before the last glaciers retreated. Today, you can actually walk through parts of this cave and stand in the presence of that deep ancient time. But never forget how close it came to staying hidden forever. If that drill had missed by just a few feet, this 24,000-year-old vault might still be sealed beneath the highway right now. Its treasures completely unknown, buried under the wheels of passing cars. Number 5. Lower Pecos Rock Art. Now we travel west into the wild, rugged canyon country of West Texas, where the Pecos River has spent millions of years slicing deep gorges through solid limestone. It's a harsh, dramatic, almost lonely landscape, and hidden in the shadows of those cliffs is something that will genuinely take your breath away. Tucked into hundreds of rock shelters and shallow cave overhangs are enormous painted murals, ancient artwork created by the people who lived here between 2,500 and 6,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, some of these paintings are older than the Egyptian pyramids. They've been clinging to these stone walls, out in the open air, for thousands of years. Now, I want to correct something you might be imagining. When people hear prehistoric cave paintings, they often picture crude, simple stick figures, a bit of scratching by primitive hands. Throw that idea out. What's on these walls is sophisticated, powerful, and deeply intentional art. Here's the newest, most fascinating piece of the puzzle. Research from Texas State University, shared in 2025, revealed something remarkable about how these murals were made. Scientists discovered that some of these massive paintings weren't created randomly over generations, with people adding a little here and there. Instead, many were carefully planned in advance and then painted in single, deliberate events. In other words, an artist or a group had a complete vision in their mind and executed it as one unified masterpiece. Even more incredibly, the murals use a consistent set of symbols, repeated across different sites, to express complex spiritual and religious ideas. This wasn't doodling. This was a visual language, a way of recording beliefs, myths, and sacred knowledge on stone. These ancient people had a shared system of meaning, painted across their entire world, and the scale of it is jaw-dropping. There are over 300 separate painted sites scattered throughout this region. Researchers describe it as a sacred landscape, an entire territory transformed into a vast, open-air art gallery and place of worship. Imagine walking for miles through the canyons and finding again and again walls covered in towering, mysterious figures, some of them larger than a human being. Picture standing in one of those cool, shadowed rock shelters. The sunlight glows on the canyon outside, and above you, painted in reds, blacks, and yellows, are the dreams and gods of a people who vanished thousands of years ago, staring back at you across an almost unimaginable gulf of time. Most people will never see these places because they're remote and carefully protected. But they are, without exaggeration, some of the oldest and most meaningful art in all of North America, hidden in plain sight in the canyons of Texas. Number 6. Hall's Cave. Our next stop looks, honestly, a little disappointing at first glance. It's not a towering cavern. It's not covered in glittering formations. It's a fairly modest cave on the Edwards Plateau in central Texas. If you walk past it, you might not think twice. And yet, to scientists, this humble little cave is treated like buried treasure. Why? Let me explain. Because it's genuinely brilliant. Hall's Cave holds something almost unbelievably rare. An unbroken, layer-by-layer record of the Texas environment going back 20,000 years or more. Think of it as the planet's own diary, and every page is still intact. Here's how it works. Over thousands and thousands of years, tiny things kept quietly drifting down and settling onto the cave floor. Dust, pollen from ancient plants, bones from small animals. Bit by bit, layer by layer, this material built up, and crucially, each new layer sealed the one beneath it, locking it in place like pressing a flower between the pages of a book. Nothing scrambled it, nothing washed it away. So today, when scientists carefully dig down through Hall's Cave, they aren't just digging through dirt, they're reading through time itself, one clean, ordered layer at a time. The bottom layers tell them about the Ice Age world. The upper layers show them how everything slowly transformed into the Texas we know today. And this is where it gets really important. One of the biggest mysteries in all of science is this: what actually happened to the giant Ice Age animals? The mammoths, the giant ground sloths, the enormous saber-toothed predators. They dominated this land for ages, and then they vanished. Was it climate change? Was it early humans hunting them? Was it disease? For decades, scientists could only guess. But places like Hall's Cave don't deal in guesses. They deal in evidence. Because that unbroken record captures the environment before, during, and after these giants disappeared. Researchers can study the actual chemical and biological fingerprints left behind. They can measure how the climate shifted. They can track when the pollen changed, when the animals faded from the record, and what was happening in the world at that exact moment. In other words, Hall's Cave is one of the rare places on Earth where we can look for the real, physical answer to how an entire world of monsters came to an end. So here's the lesson. Sometimes the most important ancient site isn't the biggest or the flashiest. Sometimes it's a plain, quiet cave that most people would walk right past. One that has been faithfully recording the story of life and death in Texas for over 20,000 years, just waiting for someone smart enough to read it. Number 7. Honey Creek Cave. Get ready to have your sense of solid ground completely shattered, because right now, beneath the rolling hills of central Texas, there is a hidden world that almost no one on the surface ever thinks about, and it is absolutely massive. Welcome to Honey Creek Cave, the longest cave in the entire state of Texas. And when I say long, I mean it stretches for more than 20 miles underground. 20 miles. That's not a little pocket in the rock. That's a vast, sprawling tunnel system winding through the darkness for a distance most people would consider a serious road trip. But here's the part that truly stops me in my tracks. This cave isn't dry and empty. It has its own river. A genuine, flowing underground river, moving silently through the pitch-black limestone, carving its path just as rivers do on the surface, except no sunlight has ever touched it. Let that image sink in. Picture the everyday world above. Highways, farms, people driving to work, running errands, living their normal lives, completely unaware. And the entire time, right beneath their tires, a secret river is quietly flowing through an ancient cathedral of stone. There are chambers down there, passages, formations, an entire landscape that exists in total darkness, hidden from the world above. Now, how did this incredible place form? Patience. Unimaginable patience. Slightly acidic water seeped into the limestone over millions of years, slowly dissolving the rock, drop by drop, inch by inch, hollowing out these enormous passages. What you see today is the result of a process so slow it makes human history feel like a single blink. And this hidden river isn't lifeless. Far from it. Honey Creek Cave is home to rare and extremely delicate creatures, specialized animals adapted to life in total darkness, found in almost nowhere else on Earth. These are fragile, unique species that have quietly evolved in this isolated underground world. That fragility is exactly why access to the cave is tightly protected and strictly limited. This isn't a place you can casually wander into. It's a sensitive, irreplaceable ecosystem, and one careless visit could damage something that took ages to develop. But the biggest takeaway here is a shift in how you see Texas itself. We tend to think of the ground as solid, dependable rock and dirt all the way down. Honey Creek Cave proves that's an illusion. A huge amount of central Texas is actually a giant honeycomb, a maze of ancient tunnels, chambers, and hidden waterways threading through the earth. So the next time you're driving through the Texas Hill Country, remember, you might be cruising directly over a 20-mile river of darkness that you'll never see. And that thought alone should change the way you look at the ground forever. Number 8. Devil's Sinkhole. Our next site sounds like something out of a nightmare, and it has the name to match. Near the small town of Rock Springs, out in the open Texas landscape, the earth simply opens up. This is the Devil's Sinkhole, and it's exactly as dramatic as it sounds. Imagine walking across flat, ordinary ground, and then suddenly in front of you, there's a gaping hole about 50 feet wide. But it's not the width that stops your heart. It's the depth. This opening plunges straight down into a massive underground chamber that drops more than 350 feet. It's one of the largest single-chamber caverns in all of Texas. A colossal, hollow void hidden right beneath the surface. Peering over that edge would be genuinely terrifying. A sheer drop into deep, echoing darkness. It's easy to see why people gave it such an ominous, devilish name. It feels like a doorway into another world. But here's the twist that earns it a place on this list. The human part of the story. Because this wasn't just an empty hole that people avoided. Around the wide mouth of the Devil's Sinkhole, archaeologists have discovered evidence of small prehistoric campsites. Ancient people were living right here on the very rim of this enormous chasm thousands of years ago. Among the discoveries is something called a burned rock midden. In plain terms, that's an ancient cooking and living area, a spot where people gathered, heated stones, prepared their food, and went about their daily lives. So this terrifying pit wasn't a place they ran from. It was part of their home, their world, a landmark on their landscape. Just imagine that scene. An ancient family sitting around a fire, cooking a meal, talking, laughing, all just steps away from a 350-foot drop into total darkness. They knew this place. They understood it. And for whatever reason, they chose to make their camp right beside it. Maybe it was a landmark. Maybe it held meaning. Maybe it was simply a good spot. We may never fully know. Today, the Devil's Sinkhole is most famous for something spectacular and alive. Every evening at dusk, millions of bats come pouring up out of that hole, a swirling, roaring, living tornado of wings that darkens the sky. It's one of the most jaw-dropping natural sights in Texas, drawing visitors who come just to witness the storm of bats erupt from the earth. But long, long before the bats made this place famous, ancient Texans were already gathered around its rim, living their lives at the edge of the abyss. And that, to me, is the real magic. A place that was sacred, useful, and terrifying all at once, thousands of years before we ever arrived. Number 9. The Buttermilk Creek Complex. Remember that quiet creek from the very beginning of this video? The one near the Gault Site that helped rewrite history? Well, that same creek has another secret buried just a little further downstream. And this one deserves its own spotlight because it delivered some of the strongest evidence in a debate that shook the entire field of archaeology. This is the Buttermilk Creek Complex. And to understand why it's so explosive, we have to go back to that big argument I mentioned earlier. When did humans first arrive in North America? For decades, the answer was locked in. The Clovis first theory ruled everything, insisting that the first people showed up around 13,500 years ago. Anyone who suggested humans were here earlier faced fierce resistance. To overturn a theory that's strong, you don't need a rumor or a hunch. You need undeniable, physical proof, found in the right place, in the right way. That's exactly what Buttermilk Creek delivered. Buried deep in the creek's ancient soil, researchers uncovered a huge collection of stone tools. But the location of these tools is what makes them so powerful. They were found beneath the Clovis layer, sitting in older, deeper, completely undisturbed ground. And in archaeology, that stacking order is everything. It follows a simple, unbreakable rule. Deeper means older. If a tool is resting in a layer below the Clovis material, then it must have been left there before the Clovis people ever existed. There's no way around it. These weren't tools that had washed in or fallen through cracks. They were sealed in place, in their proper ancient layer. The conclusion was stunning. Pre-Clovis people, humans living in Texas thousands of years earlier than the textbooks allowed, were real. Together with the nearby Gault Site, Buttermilk Creek provided the kind of solid, layered, scientifically bulletproof evidence that finally cracked open the old story for good. The map of human history had to be redrawn. And here's what I genuinely love about this discovery and why I wanted to give it its own moment. We tend to imagine that the world's greatest archaeological breakthroughs happen in exotic places, deep in the jungle, buried in the desert, hidden inside some far-off tomb guarded by legend. But Buttermilk Creek proves that's not always true. Sometimes the single biggest breakthrough in the story of humanity is sitting quietly just a few feet under a muddy Texas creek bank. Passed by, overlooked, ignored, patiently waiting for the right person, with the right tools, to dig carefully enough and deep enough to notice it. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't always far away. Sometimes it's right under our feet, hiding in the most ordinary place imaginable. Number 10, Lubbock Lake Landmark. Now let's head all the way up to the Texas Panhandle, to a site so extraordinary and so scientifically valuable that it has earned a rare and prestigious title. It's an official National Historic Landmark. And once you understand what makes it special, you'll see exactly why. This is the Lubbock Lake Landmark. And here's the claim that makes archaeologists' eyes light up. It is described as the only site in North America that preserves a complete, continuous record of nearly 12,000 years of human life, all in one single place. I need you to focus on one word there because it's the whole key: continuous. Let me explain why that word is such a big deal. Most archaeological sites are like a single photograph. They capture one moment, one culture, one slice of time, and that's it. You get a snapshot and then a gap of silence. It's valuable, sure, but it's incomplete. You're left guessing about everything that happened before and after. Lubbock Lake is completely different. Lubbock Lake isn't a photograph. It's a full-length movie. It captures the entire story, playing out generation after generation in the very same spot for 12,000 years without a break. Think about the incredible cast of that movie. It begins with Ice Age hunters, ancient people chasing giant bison and other now extinct megafauna across the plains, using stone-tipped spears to survive. Then, as the ages roll on, the record keeps going. You can watch as the climate changes, as the giant animals disappear, as new tools and new ways of living emerge. The story continues right up through more recent Native American tribes who lived and hunted on the same land. Every one of those groups left their mark in the same location, stacked in order, waiting to be read. It's an unbroken chain of human survival stretching back over 100 centuries. For archaeologists, this kind of unbroken record is the absolute holy grail. Why? Because it lets them do something they almost never can. Watch how human life actually changed over time, step by step in real sequence. They can see how people adapted when the mammoths vanished, how their hunting evolved, how their tools improved. It's not scattered guesswork pieced together from a dozen distant sites. It's the whole evolution of a way of life, recorded in one continuous place. So while the Panhandle might look like empty, windswept plains to a passing driver, the truth is that Lubbock Lake holds one of the most complete human stories anywhere on the continent. 12,000 years of people, hunting, surviving, adapting, and enduring, all layered into the ground beneath your feet. It's not just a site. It's the longest single story Texas has ever kept. Number 11, Natural Bridge Caverns. This next discovery sounds like the opening scene of an adventure movie. And the incredible thing is, it actually happened. So picture this. The year is 1960. Near San Antonio, 4 college students get permission to go exploring. Their target? A mysterious sinkhole sitting beneath a natural limestone bridge, a spot where the rock arches overhead like a doorway carved by nature itself. Now, these weren't seasoned professionals with high-tech gear. They were just curious, brave young people, drawn by the thrill of the unknown. They approached the sinkhole, found a tight, narrow crawlway, and made a decision that would change their lives. They squeezed through it into the darkness below. And what they found on the other side was jaw-dropping. They had stumbled into one of the largest and most spectacular cave systems in all of Texas. Not a small pocket, not a cramped little hollow. A massive underground wonderland that had been sitting there, hidden the entire time. Natural Bridge Caverns descends about 180 feet underground. That's deep, and it opens into enormous chambers filled with breathtaking rock formations that look almost otherworldly. Towering columns, delicate stone draperies, glistening structures hanging from the ceiling and rising from the floor. And here's the magical part. These formations are still growing. Drop by mineral-rich drop, they continue to build, just as they have for untold thousands of years. It's a living cave, nature's slow, patient artwork, still being created right now in the dark. But this cave isn't only a natural marvel, it also carries real historical and archaeological weight. In fact, Natural Bridge Caverns is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, partly because of its archaeological significance. Signs of ancient life have been discovered within it, adding a deep human layer to an already stunning geological treasure. People in some form were connected to this place long ago. Now let's return to those four students for a moment, because their story is the real heart of this one. Imagine the rush they must have felt. One instant, they're wriggling through a cramped, pitch-black crawlway, dirt on their hands, hearts pounding. The next, their lights sweep across a cathedral of stone that no human had ever laid eyes on. Pure, breathtaking discovery. And that's exactly why I love this entry. It proves something wonderful and hopeful. In Texas, world-class ancient wonders aren't always locked away behind decades of professional expeditions and massive funding. Sometimes an extraordinary hidden world is just one tight crawl space away, waiting to be found by ordinary people who are simply curious enough to squeeze through and brave enough to look. Today you can walk those same chambers on a guided tour. But as you do, remember the four young explorers who found it, and the thrill of that first unforgettable step into the unknown. Number 12. The Underwater Fossil Cave. This next one genuinely gives scientists chills, and once you hear it, it'll haunt your imagination too, because it combines two things that almost never go together: a cave and deep water. Near San Antonio, researchers were doing something that sounds almost peaceful: snorkeling through a flooded underground stream. Picture it: cool, clear water winding through a dark passage beneath the earth. They weren't necessarily expecting to make history, but as they moved through that submerged tunnel, they stumbled onto something that stopped them cold: a submerged graveyard of Ice Age animals. And here's why experts reacted so strongly. An underwater fossil site inside a cave is one of the rarest and most remarkable kinds of discovery you can possibly make. Fossils on land are one thing, but finding an entire collection of ancient remains preserved underwater, deep inside a flooded cave? That's extraordinary. It almost never happens. So what exactly did they find down there in the dark, silent water? A lost world of giants, the remains of giant tortoises, massive ancient creatures, the bones of saber-toothed cats, the legendary predators of the Ice Age, and ground sloths so enormous that some grew to roughly the size of a small car. These weren't little animals. These were the monsters that ruled Texas thousands of years ago. How did they end up there? Scientists believe these animals likely fell in or were washed into the cave system thousands of years ago. And then something crucial happened. The water preserved them. Submerged, sealed away from the open air, protected from the usual forces of decay, their remains stayed remarkably intact across an immense span of time, quietly waiting in the dark. Now let me paint the real picture for you, because it's genuinely chilling and beautiful at the same time. Imagine slipping beneath the surface of that black, still water. Your light cuts through the darkness, and there, floating in perfect silent stillness, are the bones of a saber-toothed cat. Nearby, the massive frame of a giant sloth, an entire lost menagerie of extinct creatures suspended in the cold, dark water, a frozen moment from a world that vanished long before humans built a single city here. It's like discovering a secret museum that nature built and sealed with water, hidden directly beneath the modern streets, homes, and highways of Central Texas. People go about their busy lives above, with no idea that a graveyard of Ice Age monsters lies preserved in the flooded darkness below. That contrast is exactly what makes this discovery so unforgettable. The everyday world on the surface, and just beneath it, a silent, drowned world of giants, perfectly kept, patiently waiting in the dark for the beam of a snorkeler's light to finally find them. Number 13, the Medicine Mounds. For our final stop, we're going to end with something that beautifully blurs the line between geology and the sacred, a place where the raw power of the earth and the deep belief of people come together as one. Rising up from the flat, wide-open plains near the town of Quanah, in the Texas Panhandle region, are four distinctive cone-shaped hills. Against the endless flatness around them, they stand out dramatically, almost as if they were placed there on purpose. These are the Medicine Mounds. Let's start with what they're made of, because even the geology is ancient and remarkable. At their core, these hills are formed from dolomite, a type of rock that was laid down in a distant geological age, back when a shallow sea actually covered this part of Texas. So these mounds are quite literally the remains of an ancient seabed, lifted up and left standing after countless ages of erosion wore away everything softer around them. Just that fact alone is staggering. Hills made from the floor of a sea that vanished eons ago. But to the Comanche people, one of the most powerful and feared tribes ever to control the vast lands of Texas, these were far, far more than just interesting rocks. To them, the Medicine Mounds were profoundly sacred. These hills were a spiritual refuge, a holy place tied to healing, to visions, and to the very identity of the Comanche themselves. The name says it all: Medicine Mounds. In their world, this was a site of deep power and reverence, a place connected to the spiritual forces that shaped their lives. For generations, this ground was treated as holy, approached with respect, wrapped in meaning and ceremony. And that is the perfect note to end this journey on, because it captures the entire theme of everything we've explored today. You see, an ancient structure doesn't always have to be something built by human hands. It doesn't have to be a mound of carried earth, a workshop of stone tools, or a painted cave. Sometimes the most powerful ancient structure is something the earth itself created over unimaginable spans of time, and then people filled it with meaning. They poured their beliefs, their memories, their prayers, and their reverence into it across thousands of years, until the natural and the sacred became impossible to separate. That's the real magic hidden beneath and across Texas. It isn't just old bones and buried tools. It's the incredible way the land and the people have been woven together. The seabed becoming a temple, the hill becoming holy, the ordinary becoming sacred, and the Medicine Mounds, standing quiet and proud on the plains, are the perfect symbol of it all. So here's my question for you. Out of all 13, which one truly blew your mind? Was it the buried tools at Galt that rewrote human history? The saber-toothed cats floating in that flooded cave? Or the mysterious wall hidden beneath an entire town? Drop your pick in the comments. I genuinely read them, and I'd love to know which one got you. If this journey beneath the surface amazed you, do me a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe, because what's hidden under other states is just as jaw-dropping, and you won't want to miss it. There's another deep dive waiting for you right on your screen now. Quick reminder, many of these sites are fragile, protected, or on private land, and some are truly dangerous. This video is here to inform and inspire your curiosity, not as a guide to explore on your own. Always visit through official tours and never disturb an ancient site. Protecting these places is how we make sure the next generation gets to be amazed too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you beneath the surface next time.